along better.
game.
Right?
Right.
Sometimes
We get along so well, and sometimes you're extreme right, I'm extreme left, I'm liberal, you're a conservative, and yet we get along so well. That's marvelous, wonderful.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
Okay.
Amazing grace.
So today,
That saved a wretch.
like you. So today, what we're going to do.
That's good. Come on, talk to me. Get into that microphone.
What we're going to do is trying to give you a little example of
Give me an example of
this versus that thing.
what he has said.
He didn't want
Come
to
on,
do it.
Hillary, vote for me, baby.
No.
wasn't
I don't
doing
know. I don't know about that.
Did you know that Jack can count backwards?
Did I know that Jack can count backwards? No.
Yeah, he needs to go on the show at some point and say, I can say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and all that. I mean, he's good.
You know, you're making kind of fun of him in a way.
I am
but
not.
Some people get that mixed up.
Have you ever heard him say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
No.
Okay, that's my point. My point, he's backwards all the time. And that's why he's in the control room and not up here. He only walks backwards throughout the studio. He's never walking forward. And so Gavin asked me about that the other day. He asked, Grandpa, why does Jack walk backwards? I said, because he counts backwards. That makes sense. Yeah. Now, Rick, he counts sideways. Now, how would you count to 5 sideways?
I'd probably say 1, 3, 5. I don't know.
That's funny. Okay.
Not really, but.
Not really. Okay.
No, it's not tickling my funny bone today.
Some people, they're celebrating Easter. Some people are celebrating resurrection. Other people are celebrating April Fool's Day. Other people are simply celebrating life itself. But today, I hope that we don't celebrate disparaging one another.
Yes.
So.
No, we don't celebrate that at all.
No, not at all. This is very good coffee.
Thank you. Darrell, are you there?
I'm here, and I fit into the category of a live celebrator. And also, I have a question. Is Jack maybe Jewish?
Good one.
He always starts at the back of the book. You're right. Yeah.
Okay, that explains it.
Yeah. Diana, good morning.
Good morning, Rhonda. Good morning,
Hey.
Dr. Jones. Good morning, Darrell. Good morning, Jack. Good morning, Rick. Who else is back there?
There's
And
sea
happy
of
whatever
people.
it is that you're celebrating. I'm actually celebrating an anniversary today. 42 years ago today, I got my head cut open so they could see what was going on inside, and they found nothing.
Is that for? I mean.
That is for real. I
That's-
had cranial surgery on April Fool's Day, 1976.
Wow.
Wow.
You told me that they found a brain in there.
Yeah, actually, what happened was I was having motor seizures, and I spent a month in the hospital. All sorts of tests. I had one of the first CAT scans in Cleveland. And what they saw looked like a tumor, and they said, hey, we're going to have to take a look at this because, if it is a tumor, if it is malignant, we're going to want to do something about it. And they opened me up, they took a biopsy, and it was too much normal brain. And they looked at each other and said, what the heck is this? But they closed me back up, put me on Dilantin, I've been fine. No problems at all.
Wow, that's great. Ever since, that's great. So your brain was bigger than other people's then, right? You just had too much brain.
Too much brain. Yeah. There are the ventricles inside that are supposed to be there. And the one on the right side wasn't there at all. It was just totally full of brain tissue. And it was like, okay, wow. We've never seen this before. I'm full of surprises.
That is a surprise. And yeah, it's April Fool's Day, and I'm just waiting for you to say, no, not really, that didn't happen, but I'm believing you. I'm believing you right now.
It really did happen.
I believe you. I believe you.
Yeah, I just about punched the neurosurgeon because he came into my hospital room and said, okay, we've got you set up for surgery on Thursday. and I'm looking through in my head with the calendar. Thursday, that's April Fool's Day, you son of a.
I know. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
He got a smile out of that one.
Well, some people might call it a miracle. Some people might call it you had too much gray matter. So we'll just say we're glad that you're all right now. So
Yeah, call it a miracle of modern medicine if you want to, because
yeah.
100 years ago, I never would have made it.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I tell you what, it's wonderful to know that someone is reading a book, someone is studying, someone is trying to do something for humanity in a manner that will help save lives and give us quality of life. And so, Diana is very much a testimony of that. So that's good. That's good. The name of the program today is A Reset, a Pivot, and a Commitment to Process, Not Conclusion.
What you just said about the doctors goes
Right.
so much right along that path.
I agree with
Thank
that.
God they're in a process and they just didn't stop.
Certainly. One of the things I was sharing with you this morning was a dream that I had about my father, and yesterday was a very special day. But one of the things that he wanted me to do over and over again was to help him because he was committed to a certain belief. And the thing that I think that has all of us stuck in life, much like the disciples, they were stuck in Judaism. Someone comes along and says something better, and so they commit to, let's say, another belief set.
Right.
And so this belief set that the apostles were sharing, that is, with other people, and whether we had aristocrats doing this or that, that is, writing the Gospels or not, is really secondary to my point. These people did shift from one faith to another, as Paul claimed. But to shift from one belief to another belief, only to market that belief for the rest of your life, doesn't make sense to me. And so when my father asked me over and over again throughout the years to help him, he wanted me to help him, build the church. And I think that's where a lot of Christians are. It's every Easter, it's about how can we tell this message in a different way. People are getting a bit bored with the same old, and so let's repurpose it, and that's what's happening. I think this is the problem that you get into when you are committed to a belief rather than a process. I wish my father would have opened up his mind a bit more. He was a wonderful person, but he was so committed to that belief, that structure, that ism, that he couldn't actually be committed to a process. In other words, life keeps changing. We keep shifting. There's something much, much better than, let's say, the way that we believed in, let's say, 1958, 59, 60, or 70, or whatever. And so my point is, life keeps changing, and yet, for some reason, we're so committed to our isms. And today here at NCG, one of the things that I would like to see nuanced is let's not commit to either belief. In other words, if we could, just for a moment, picture a world where a theist would simply say, I've committed myself to theism for a long time. An atheist could say, I've committed myself to atheism for a long time. What if we backed up for a moment and said, I don't want to be committed to either. I simply want to suspend judgment and explore the question in a fresh way. And I may never, ever resolve the question. Why can't I move on? And I think that, especially in the great debate, I think that people are so committed to their ism that it becomes boring. I can tell you all the theistic arguments, I can tell you all the atheistic arguments, and we're just going around and around and around, and it's dizzy. And so people are trying to come up with creative ways. How can we make this more exciting? And so we get these radical atheists and we get these radical theists, because in order to keep entertainment alive, you have to have a Donald Trump. And that's not to disparage Donald Trump, but I'm simply saying that you have to have a shock jock. And so we have a lot of shock jock atheists and a lot of shock jock theists out there, and it's really not doing us any good. And I think the only way to back away from this is to get people committed to a process, because with my father, I could not see him committed to a process as long as he was committed to his belief set. Does it make sense?
Sure.
And so what he meant for me to do is to commit the rest of my life, that is, to a belief that is a theistic belief, and that's what he wanted me to be committed to. And I'm not willing to commit myself any longer to that belief, nor am I willing to commit to the belief that is the narrative of atheism. And so I'm pulling back, and I think that life can be explored and a lot more meaningful, with a lot more quality, without commitments to either one of those isms. My commitment to you should be my value. I should be able to write better narrative than Jesus. I should be able to not focus in on the methodology that so many people are using in the great debate, and actually use scientific method and practice, and get outside of this thing that is driving people to us versus them. And this is why this show is called This Versus That, because in a relationship, we find that your position, my position in life, it's constantly in flux. But it's our commitment to each other and working things out. That's what makes it meaningful and beautiful. And I mean, just think about how we looked at things 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and look at how we are looking at life now.
Right.
It's so different. But if we were committed to either one of these isms, it would not be as wonderful as it is. And so that's why I don't want to disparage people if they are resonating in a sense with, the Jesus narrative, but where, the disciples and the followers of Jesus get stuck, it's like they're committed to that belief, and they have to become very, very defensive, apologist, if you will. And the same thing is true on the other side of the fence. The atheists who are making claims, that is, they claim that, and a lot of people get upset at me for saying that atheism is a belief set. Anytime that you have a viewpoint that is to a question and you've formed an opinion, you do have a belief. And so that belief, whether it be theism or atheism, or whether you're an atheist or a theist, those beliefs don't need to be committed to. And we need to pull back from that. And I think that we could go much further together if atheists and theists would commit to a process rather than committing to those narratives. In other words, I wanted to do this morning. I want to present a model of how a resurrection could take place, and I want to use scientific methodology to demonstrate that some of this could have happened. But I don't want to do it today simply because I will have some people who are strong believers. They will take that and market it as if that's what I believe. And I would like to be able to, build models here at NCG and say, this is a model, this is not my belief, but I can build models of philosophy, I can build models of X, Y, and Z, whether it be philosophy or not, and see if people resonate with it, and just try to have conversations that are meaningful and move forward. And so I'm going to make the argument that is for the resurrection of Jesus, but it's going to be so different. I think that a lot of Christians will get upset because it's so naturalistic. But there is a way of looking at this that opens the door to the possibility, but it's not at all tethered to the Christian narrative, because the Christian narrative has been falsified many, many, many times. It doesn't make sense to the text. And so today, I celebrate humanity. That is, if humanity can find it within, if we can find it within ourselves to make a commitment to each other, make a commitment to a process, not a conclusion, and keep moving on down the road. And I wish atheists and theists who keep using my language, because a lot of atheists are starting to say, well, I'm committed to a process, not a conclusion, and they don't want to source who is saying that, because what is meant by me in stating a lot of the things that I'm stating has a method and a practice behind it. And
Right.
I wish people would do some sourcing rather than just saying, well, I can steal that. Well, they've stolen, words have usage, not inherent meaning, and so many other things. I've gone to the Huffington Post and found some of my writing there, and it's off, I don't know. It just aggravates me because people are not willing to be authentic and genuine and honest, that is, when it comes to conversation. What are your thoughts? I've been rambling.
Well, I think anyone that has a belief, and I think all people have beliefs, I think we become mini apologists. Because if I have a belief in anything and someone challenges it, my gut instinct is to try to not apologize for it, but, try to let people know why I believe that. And I think that's human nature. And I think that's good. I really do. Now, these apologists that, are off the chain, and I think of street apologists. To me, that's my opinion. They get off the chain and really dogmatic and extreme and, off-putting to people. But humans, we do this thing called, I'm going to back up, try to what I say and believe.
Right. Friday, I went into this, it's mammoth. It's a megachurch here in Pensacola, one of the largest, if not the largest. And when I walked in there, they were very kind, welcoming, making you feel better than what life is in a sense. But my point is, when I walked in there, I went, wow, they have better equipment than what we have. But not really. Our broadcast equipment is far superior to theirs. But when I walked into that place, I said, look at how much money is being spent here. And the guy said, we have 4 services a day, that is on Sunday morning. I said, you're filling this place up 4 times a day? He said, yeah, this place was actually built to where we can take out the back and the front, and we're going to build balconies and all of that. And so this is going to become a mega church here in the city of Pensacola next year, because they're tearing out the walls, they're rebuilding, restructuring. And I said, how large is this church? Oh, we have 5 campuses, but by this time next year, we're going to have 10 campuses. And so this isn't atypical. This is becoming the norm. Look at Olive Baptist Church.
Sure.
It's actually, in a sense, buying up or making contracts with other churches, taking them over. And so they are becoming this mega ministry. And so these are people who are committed to theism. And so many of you guys will say, well, I'm not committed to atheism. Then why do we have the radicals out there, the 4 horsemen, and people who connect with them? Why are they making the assertions that they are making concerning the question about God? Because nothing, I keep saying that we have nothing compelling, and I keep challenging people, please come here on the place, give a coherent and articulate argument as to why you would be an atheist or a theist. I would like to hear it. I've heard nothing compelling, nothing articulate to the question. And so whether it be someone as kind and as articulate as Ozzy has never put an articulate argument that is for atheism on this show. And if he has elsewhere, I'd like to hear it. And my point is, I have a lot of respect for him. He's a genius, without question. And I'm not going to disparage him. I just don't understand, and maybe this is how ignorant I am, I just don't understand the great commitment to these isms rather than, to a process by which we can grow. Because think about this. Anytime that we start making a commitment, let's say to an ism, like atheism or theism, is there a chance that we're looking for things to confirm?
Sure.
Namely, our
Confirmation
belief.
bias, absolutely.
Right. And so we're looking for things to confirm, the resurrection or confirm this. And I understand, in a sense, there's a bit of discipline to that. But on the other side of the coin, I think that the majority of people who are in this, they don't have any discipline at all. And this is why I'm afraid of going out on the street and doing this and that. And so I'm not going to get into that, because we are going to have people that I respect highly that do go out on the street trying to improve the quality of life for others. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I read the chats and just trying to see what people are resonating with, and
I have to take sometimes and put on my glasses. You can read without your glasses?
well, not really. I have to get real
Darrell,
close.
what do you say in the midst of us reading here? Talk to me.
Well, I'm sitting here thinking about, how that I can understand why the atheists, so many atheists, I should say, have trouble with people who say that they believe something because of faith. I think I understand where they're coming from, and that is that I lived a lot of years thinking that I possessed something that was equal to substance, you might say, that caused me basically to believe, and without any evidence. And that was kind of the credential. You had to believe it, even though you couldn't prove it, even though there was no actual evidence. It was faith itself that was the evidence. And I can understand them pushing back against that. Now, the thing that I don't understand is why someone would go to the degree to say that there is no possibility outside of these concepts that people have, such as faith and believing, and this entity requiring that there be no evidence, and yet you believe anyway. If you eliminate that aspect of it and say, well, okay, maybe this is a little absurd. Maybe this is stretching things a little too thin here. But does that mean we give up on any possibility, any reason to research or consider so much of what has not yet been explained, so much of what has not yet been explored, and say there is no possibility? And so to me, that's kind of the way I would try to represent the two extremes, what puts people in these category of isms, rather than just collectively coming together and saying, well, yeah, maybe we have been too extreme in the direction we've gone, and maybe there's something we could consider together here. And I kind of like to think that's where we come in. That's where we find ourselves, not giving up, certainly, on possibilities, because all has not been explored by any means.
Sure.
And not willing to commit to something that we don't have any or at the most very little evidence of, so that we can continue to move forward rather than get stuck.
Exactly. Diana, do you agree with Darrell, or is it your worlds apart? What's the
I
story?
find myself in pretty general agreement with Darrell. I was a theist many years ago, growing up Catholic. I wasn't able to brook with what we were told in Catholic school. This is a mystery. There's no understanding it. You've just got to accept it. You've just got to believe it. So I found myself turning away until I eventually called myself an atheist. I still do, as a convenience.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the whole accepting things on faith, as most people understand that to mean, just never worked with me. I had to question. And finally now the questioning is starting to pay off. I'm starting to learn some things. And that's a wonderful thing.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Questioning is great, especially when no one has produced any solid evidence either way. The question should remain until or unless, you might say, something is proven. And I, from what I can understand, that's true science. You don't solve anything unless it's truly solved. So I think that's really where we're at, whether we'll admit it or not. There's just many things that we can't conclude honestly. Now we can be dishonest and say I've come to this conclusion or that conclusion just because I want to, or because I think this or I think that, or believe this or believe that. But if we can't, if we don't have the proof, then let's keep looking.
Well, let me see if I can answer one of the questions. It was mentioned when you mentioned having the discipline in mind behind your process. To what are you referring? Let's look at lexical theory. I have a book in my hand. It's called A Greek-English Lexicon of the New Testament and Other Early Christian Literature. This is probably the most respected lexical work on the market. However, if you do just a little bit of work, you'll find out that the gentleman, Walter Bauer, who is a great theoretical lexical worker in the field, he used a method, came up with a method, actually authored the method, and that method has been falsified. What am I suggesting? When it comes to a serious study of Koine Greek, we have a language that died. When something dies, sometimes things get lost. And in this sense, this language died. We can't assume that modern Greek, that is how we use Greek in a modern sense, is anything like Koine. We are finding some similarities, but we have to work this out carefully. But what took place when Koine actually died, the majority of it was lost. And so the recovery was, we recovered not films, because there were no films. We didn't recover audio. We didn't have any audio. We recovered manuscripts, that is, writings. And so when you're looking at writings in Greek, both uncial and minuscule form, it's very difficult without people being alive to tell us, that is, how they used certain words. And so if you don't have a determinate language, or nomenclature, I should say, without a determinate nomenclature to see in a consistent manner to where you can see patterns, it's very difficult to go back and say, oh, this is how something is used. And so the methodology that Bauer and others came up with, it was useful. That is, in taking steps toward reconstructing, namely the language, and possibly the intent of these various authors in the Bible. But these methods and practices have been falsified. These make no sense now. And now we have John Lee, Ann Nyland, other theoretical lexical theorists in the, these people are working night and day, in a sense, trying to put this together. There's a large focus today on the prepositions, for instance, of the Greek New Testament. It's going to take at least 13 to maybe 30 to 40 years before we even can wrap our minds around some of these prepositions. And yet what's being sold in the name of atheism is scientific method, but not really. Because listen to Carrier talk about the New Testament. He's not taking into account that every method that is used to measure out Koine Greek has been falsified. He's not taking into account that we've got to start, in a sense, all over again. We've got to look at this dead language where we lost everything, and he's assuming that we found enough to suggest that we actually know what the intent of these authors might be. He's suggesting that when we read this, we're really comprehending these people in a context without having the essentials. And this is why I've made a lot of noise about indexical and deictic elements. Carrier doesn't have them. He's working with major assumptions, much more than if one assumed that Jesus was resurrected. And so I'm simply saying, when you listen to Carrier, when you listen to Robert Price, and you listen to Aaron Ra, who parrots those two, because Aaron Ra is parroting not what he understands lexically, not what he understands in the text. He's parroting the works of these two people who are very well disciplined in history, but not disciplined at all, that is, in lexical theory. And so we don't have sufficient data. In other words, we don't have all the indexical and deictic elements that I keep talking about to actually do a paradigmatic and syntagmatic analysis. And many people get tired of hearing about that.
Especially Seitin Brinkade.
Yeah, Seitin, he didn't like it because he didn't understand it. You get bored really quick on this show if you don't understand things. You're going to walk away, and I don't blame people for turning the channel because it's a bit boring. But what I'm saying is, you have so many people who are committed to saying that there is no Jesus, historical Jesus, I've heard people take the Luke passage and say, look, here's the census issue. It's a contradiction, ha, 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 ha. And you can turn it from channel to channel to channel, and you can see all the major players in atheism, marketing a belief. There's no difference between that kind of belief, that kind of thing that we see in atheism, than the faith that we see in theism. No difference, because you can go to church, and I was listening to Dr. Jeremiah this morning, and what he was saying was ridiculous. It's not according to scientific method and practice. And the same thing is true with Carey and Price when they're talking about the biblical text. And so let's not pretend. Let's not say, oh, we have everything that we need, that is to discover whether there is a God or not. We don't. We don't have anything. And I'm honest enough to say we don't have anything. And so why are we forming an opinion on A when we have nothing? And so we're having revivals in the name of A is not a goat, or A is a goat. And so my point is, it's foolish. It's utterly foolish. And my dad kept saying, please help me build this church, because on this rock, I'm going to build my church, blah, blah, blah. And he wanted me to be committed to this faith, this belief set. And other people in atheism want me to be committed to atheism. I've had the major players of atheists come my way. Oh, you've got to get involved with the big red A. Help us do some pushback. They've wanted me to debate certain people in theism just to make fun of them. And I said, this is not about me. I'm committed to a process. And what I mean by that, the discipline in lexical theory means that you're putting together models. You're not saying this model is something that I believe in. This model is a model, and you understand that this is synthetic, and there are other ways of looking at it. And so you build various models. And so when you lose something completely, that is the entire, when you lose, for instance, the essential elements of reconstructing a language, what are you going to do but work synthetically with it? And that's what I'm suggesting. And so when I say that I have a model to present, a case for the resurrection, I don't want anyone to believe it. I want them to simply look at the model as if it were just a model.
Right, and is that part of the process?
It's part of the process, because if you're disciplined enough to say, in lexical theory, we've built models, and we can even publish books, because this is a model. No serious lexical theorist looks at this as the gospel. They do not look at this as the conclusion. They look at this as a process. These are components that have been built and provided to us to work with, and now it's failed. The majority of this is in question.
Sure.
Not some, but all of it's in question. And yes, what does that mean to all extant English versions of the Bible?
They're in question also.
They are in question, not a little bit, but a great deal of question. But I don't see people in atheism nor theism taking the discipline, the science, the commitment seriously. And so we have people saying, I'm a theist, I'm an atheist, and all of that. Okay.
So they're
My
parked,
question
it's
is
like
why?
park the car,
Yeah,
and then just gonna stay there.
right. Because church life is very much about parking your brain in a certain ism, and you're a pew sitter. And I think that's true not just in theism, but I think it's also true in atheism. If I'm wrong, I stand to be corrected. Come on this show, rebuke me, prove to me that I'm wrong. But if you have something compelling, if you are articulate, if you're truly articulate to the question of God, I haven't ever heard anyone being articulate to the question of God. I've heard a lot of noise. People can't define God without using cartoon style lexical theory. It has hindered us. It's about time that we put something on the shelf and moved on. It's about time that we if we spent more time trying to help our children, let's go camping with them, let's go fishing with them, let's put a concert together for them. Let's not be so committed to these belief sets. These belief sets are dividing people. These are not belief sets that we should hold on to. These are belief sets that we should say, when it comes to theism, put it on the shelf. When it comes to atheism, put it on the shelf. Let's suspend our judgment. Let's be mature enough to move on, because you're not going to be involved in good scientific method and practice if you're parked in the atheistic camp nor a theistic camp. My 2 cents.
Anyone else want to put their 2 cents worth in?
Hello, Diana. Am I wrong?
No, I don't see you as wrong at all. And it's interesting that you mentioned the historicity of Jesus. I'm working on a video response to a Catholic apologist on just that point. I'm hoping that I can get this. I can't say get it right, but I'm hoping I'm doing a decent job here, because I'm not necessarily trying to tell him that, okay, this is what you should believe. What I'm after is, what I'm hearing from you isn't working. Could you try to consider something else? And I hope that anybody who takes a look at it might get that point.
Anyone who speaks Koine, anyone who is engaged in the process, the work of lexical theory, they're not convinced that they're right. They're simply saying, let's work with this model, that model, and so on. They are attempting, and a lot of this is much like building a model airplane. They don't know if it's close. It's most of the time people are in the context of saying, well, this is maybe true. In other words, when it comes to the tense system in Greek, when you take whether it be the first or the second aorist, the aorist, it can be dealt with from many different viewpoints. It's a very difficult tense to even measure out. We don't even know, in many cases, how it could be rendered. And I'm talking about not into English, but how could we, that is, when we're using it, how did the ancients use it? In other words, it's easy to tell how something's being used in the modern sense because we can measure it, because it's testable. We can do it over and over again, correct?
Yeah,
But-
that's the science that I've
Right.
been engaged in.
But-
That's how
but-
that works.
But when you factor in the entropy that happens within language, and you factor in the multiple usages of a language, and then when you get into the
Still hard in
it's still
modern.
hard.
Yeah,
True.
it's just
and so you,
almost impossible.
people who spoke Koine, you had less than 3% who were actually illiterate, so they couldn't write anything down. And so how do you archive something that would bless someone 2,000 years into the future with the ability to, somewhat tease out what you meant when you were not capable of actually leaving that behind? And so this is the thing that we need to approach. Atheists need to be saying, why am I an atheist? Theists need to be asking the question, why am I a theist? Why am I committed? Why did I take a leap of faith and form an opinion on a question that I'm not articulate to?
And the next question would be, if I shouldn't be an atheist or a theist, what's there for me?
I'm simply saying that an algebra teacher is a wonderful person when the algebra teacher admits that if there is something on the marker board, A plus B equals C, little Johnny, little Susie, we can't answer what A is until we have something. Until then, we're going to leave it on the board. We may erase it for a few semesters because we leave A alone when we have nothing to work with. Now, at some point when we get something to work with concerning A, that's when we start approaching it. But until then, we can be people of that pretense. We can just guess at it, but that's not what the process is about. And so when people start guessing what A is without having a meaningful way of approaching A, that's pushed off the table all the time in algebra. And the same thing is true in logic. The same thing is true in every discipline. People are not playing games, and there is no biologist who plays the kind of games in science that we see atheists playing in atheism and theists playing in theism. People are not articulate to the question. People are not, when I ask the question about God, most people don't even know what that means. And this is why I'm very much in favor of theoretical theology, because it doesn't commit to belief, but what it does, it attempts to explore, that is reasonably so, steps that could even approach the question, because right now we have nothing that is competent or compelling or articulate, I should say, that's even demonstrating that we're even getting close to what the question is. And I think you would agree with me, Diana, correct?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the one thing that I've grown up with as a scientist, or one engaged in scientist, is that you've got to be ready to revise. Always revise. It's never correct. You might find something that's useful, but you might later find something that's more useful. You know, look at Newton and Einstein. And I think that we should all really try to take that position, that what we think we know may change at any time.
We need to get out of here. We're running overtime already,
I
and you're
just
going to do
realized it.
reflections, and so
Reflections is next.
Let's just turn this show off, and you guys are going to stay around, right? They're going to do reflections, and then we're going to go into a teaching. If you want to get involved in that, send us a private message. And with that said, we're out of here, right? We've got to go. We're 4 minutes over. Wow.
We have to twist off.
Twisting off. Turn the knob, Jack. Thank you.